Welcome to the Millionaire Mindcast, where we broadcast weekly interviews with millionaire minds from across the globe to empower you on your journey of unlocking a rich and fulfilling life. It's time to unleash your millionaire within. Now, here's your host, Maddie A.
What's going down, everybody? Welcome into the Millionaire Mindcast, a show that focuses on all things mindset, money, and motivation to help you increase your income, impact, and influence. For those that are new listeners of the show, I'm your host, Maddie A. Thanks for checking out the podcast today. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee, we cover all kinds of topics that are important for building a wealthy and healthy life. And whatever that definition may be for you, it's different for everybody, right? So if you're a returning listener, much love as always. It's an honor to be a part of your journey. We have an awesome show with multi-millionaire Steve Little of Zero Limits Ventures. Tune in for that today, but before we dive in, just want to share a few quick reminders of awesome things going on in the Millionaire Mindcast community. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, to join us in the Millionaire in the Making Facebook group. It's growing every day. We got all kinds of people adding in, so it's kind of cool to see the momentum building behind that. It can be hard finding people or communities that are interested and open to having these types of conversations, being that they're just not common. They're not everyday conversations, right? So if you can relate to that, look no further and come join us in the community there on Facebook. Just search Millionaire in the Making on Facebook and ask to join the group. One of the admin will add you in there. And also, if you haven't done so already, be sure to download this month's free community resource, the Net Worth Tracker. If you're not tracking your net worth right now, this will be an awesome exercise for you to do. And even if you already are maybe tracking your net worth or you did it a while ago, this is something I like to do quarterly. Like I always say, you can't manage what you don't measure. So doing this quarterly is a great way to know where you currently stand and maybe where in relation it is to your goals. And that way you can make intelligent decisions on how to protect and grow your wealth moving forward. If you want this free resource, all you have to do is text net worth, all one word, to 44222, and it will automatically deliver to your email inbox. We've gotten some great feedback and responses from people who have downloaded this tracker and how much they enjoy just going through the exercise. It's simple, it's easy, but it's very insightful, and it can be inspiring or, maybe not as inspiring, but at least gives you an idea of where you're at. So if you want to get a grasp on your wealth, if you want to grow your wealth, this is a great place to start. All you got to do, text net worth, all one word, to 44222. And if you have suggestions for future resources that you'd like coming from the Millionaire Mindcast team, let me know. The team and I will dive into creating those for you so you have more resources and are empowered on your wealth building journey. Last, I've been getting some pretty amazing messages from you, our listeners of the show, and I just wanted to give some shout outs to the people that are putting in the work and taking the action and really leveling up their life and their businesses. And this week I wanted to give some love to Alec, who said after listening to the podcast, it made him realize that, life's way too damn short and he's destined to do way bigger things than he is currently settling for. And, he just doesn't want to accept staying in a job that he's miserable at, being a mail carrier. And even though he respects his industry, he feels called to live a much bigger life, and now he is actively pursuing those. So get it, Alec. Chase those dreams, brother. Also, big props to Ava on taking action and upping her game in her fitness business after having some mindset breakthroughs from the amazing Jen Groover interview. That is awesome. If you haven't checked that one out, you can listen to Jen's episode number 113. She shared some epic mind hacking tips that even I hadn't heard of before. So be sure to peep that interview. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, today's Millionaire Worth Modeling is Steve Little. And Steve has an awesome entrepreneurial story, starting with the fact that he sold his very first business at age 15 for just shy of $200,000. You're probably wondering, well, what was it? It's nothing fancy, but he executed on a really cool strategy and moved on beyond that to sell 6 tech companies over the course of his career, averaging $100 million in exit on each one. So that's pretty crazy. But just love that Steve was so humble. And as you can imagine, now he's a well-known player in the merger and acquisition space and helps other companies increase their valuations, wrap their head around kind of those important metrics, and position themselves for big paydays and exits when selling their own companies. Steve was just a super cool dude, which I think you'll pick up on that, in our conversation. In today's interview, we talked a lot about, struggles most entrepreneurs and businesses face when first starting out of the gate, kind of wearing those startup caps and all the different hats you have to wear in the beginning and how you can maybe move past those. And we also talked about how to create more value in your business and why it's important to build your business with an exit strategy in mind from the very beginning, which I found very interesting because it's just not something most business owners and companies think about all the time when they're mapping out their business plan. So it was great to hear Steve's take on that. And overall, my favorite part was when he talked about conscious capitalism, or this term of social entrepreneurship, and how that's becoming such a critical piece of all companies' business plans, not just from a customer standpoint, but also because of its role to attract the right people and the right talent into your company. So it was a really great chat, and I know you're going to enjoy it. So be sure to have your pen and paper handy. And with that being said, let's dive into today's show with Steve Little after this quick message.
Have you ever wanted to tap into the minds of other successful millionaires and see exactly what things they are learning and implementing in their lives and businesses? Well, now you can by subscribing to Millionaire Notes, the exclusive monthly newsletter that delivers all the books, resources, insights, and strategies that the brightest millionaires from around the world are leveraging to build wealthier lives. Each and every month, the Millionaire Mindcast team and I compile the best tips, tools, and wisdom shared by my guests of the show from all the mastermind groups I'm a part of, from the countless conferences I pay thousands of dollars to attend, and most importantly, the journals my millionaire mentors have given me access to. I've always been a big believer that success leaves clues, and by learning from other brilliant minds, we are able to model our way to a more rich and fulfilling life. And being that time is a limited and precious resource for all of us, we figured here at the Millionaire Mindcast team, we would do all the legwork for you, mine through all the data, and deliver you the most valuable golden nuggets that you can use and implement in your life each and every month. You don't have to do all the research. You don't have to pay hundreds or even thousands of dollars to attend the conferences and the events to gain access to this elite information for literally the price of a morning latte for just $5 a month. You can have all these delivered to your inbox. If you have any desire to increase your income, your impact, or your influence, then Millionaire Notes is for you. To receive your monthly edition, text Millionaire Notes, all one word, to 44222. There's no contracts. You can cancel at any time you like. To sign up today, all you have to do is text Millionaire Notes, all one word, to 44222. Let's dive back into the show. Well, I'm excited to welcome into the show Mr. Steve Little. What's up, man?
How are you, man? Great to see you.
It's great. It's great. I'm doing well. We are enjoying a little cool weather before it gets back to 100 degrees. So where are you coming to us from?
We got 95 here today. So.
Okay. But you got the East Coast humidity, right?
That's right. Right. It's plenty miserable.
Yeah, plenty miserable. I was actually just out in Philly for a charity that I sit on the board of. We do a conference every year in Philadelphia for One Life Fully Lived. And we got, according to all of the locals and people that attended the conference, some of the best weather that before it got hot and muggy and humid. So it sounds like it caught up to you guys.
It was spectacular out here last week, 70 some odd degrees and breezy. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Yep.
That's not here. That's just not normal, right?
Right. So I must have brought a little bit of the Cali weather out to the East Coast.
That's right. Well, I did that when I moved here. I was for 15 years in the Bay Area. When I moved here, I brought a lot of that with me. We had pretty cool weather here for a while.
So where are you from originally?
Well, actually from this area originally. I moved around a lot when I was young. My dad worked for General Electric in the NASA division. So we did all the Apollo space programs and all those things. Then went to high school in the DC area, started, working professionally, and then pretty quickly moved out to the Valley, got hooked up with a bunch of top tier VC firms out there.
And this was all kind of due to the line of work you were in, which I know for a lot of our listeners who are, you know, business oriented individuals, either working within entrepreneurial organizations, being, you know, kind of the quote unquote intrapreneur within those entrepreneurial spaces, and or have their own entrepreneurial endeavors. I want to make sure we give people an kind of a recap and understanding of how you got started, because your journey is pretty damn epic. And you, if I'm correct, sold your first business at 15 years old for $200,000+.
Right around 200. Yeah. Yeah.
So not many 16 or 15-year-olds can say that. So why don't we start there? And what was the space? How'd you get into it? And, you know, what kind of sparked that entrepreneurial bug within you?
It's a good story. And it actually is that first experience is the thing that gave me the roadmap for what's turned out to be the rest of my career. So it's definitely worth telling. When I was 13, I was like every other kid, you know, I wanted to make some money in the summer. And so my dad, you know, promptly pointed to the lawnmower and said, have at it, you know, cut as many yards as you can get, right? So I went out there to cut grass one Saturday and had some neighbors that were going to pay me, you know, $5, $8, $10, whatever. That lasted about 2 hours, and I didn't like walking behind that lawnmower at all. We lived outside of Philly, so it was a summer day in August.
You figured out quickly that wasn't the most scalable business.
It's not for me at all. So I very quickly went out and hired some other people to stand behind the lawnmower. I figured out that I could arbitrage the deal, right, and charge $10, pay $5, and that was all good, right?
Yeah.
You know, I quickly grew that, had a bunch of yards, and then, you know, started to buy equipment. And unfortunately, I don't want to get into a sidebar, but my family is not a very close one. So my parents weren't really very involved in their kids' lives. And so we were pretty much doing things on our own. And I ended up renting a garage down the street from another neighbor and loaded it up with equipment. And ended up with about 35 guys on my staff. We'd run, you know, 120 jobs a week through that business. And I'd go to job site on my bicycle. It's always funny because, you know, we'd be standing there talking to the guys about what I wanted them to do for their particular yard. And somebody would walk up and talk to one of the older guys there about having their job done. And he said, you got to talk to the kid on the bike over there.
That's great.
But anyway, the lesson I learned there, and the thing to take away from the experience, was that I noticed that in about mid-August, you know, I had to go back to every house during the week and get them to write their check for the next week, or, you know, whatever, resell the job every week, so to speak. And mid-August, the grass doesn't grow very fast in that part of the country. So I was getting a lot of, well, I think we can go another week, come back next week, right? And about 4 times in one Saturday, I realized this is going to cost me some money. I got to come up with a better plan. Long story short, I came up with the idea of just having them sign a semi-annual or an annual contract, and I would agree to do all the yard work, all the leaf raking, all the snow shoveling, you know, after a storm, pick up all the stuff, whatever. Take care of the outside, right? And for a flat monthly rate. And I think it was only one customer didn't take that deal. So we had a lot of this sort of recurring payments coming in then, and checks were showing up in the mailbox all the time, you know, and I was running back and forth to the bank on my bicycle, and things were going pretty well. And I had I don't know if I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but in grade school back then, we had those big binders with the blue cloth cover on them. And I had a great big one, like a 2-inch binder, and I'd written in magic marker on the front of that thing, Steve's Big Book of Business. And I had all those contracts stacked up in that binder, right? And one day my dad came home and said, well, I've been transferred. We're moving to Florida. I said, well, what am I going to do with my business? Now, I understand he thought I was cutting a couple of neighbors' yards.
Right.
Well, you just have to tell him you can't come back and cut their grass. I said, no, Dad, I don't think you understand. So I went upstairs and got my big book of business and brought it down to him, opened it up, and we're leafing through it. All of a sudden, it dawns on him what he's looking at. He was like, oh, my God, how many are in here? I said, about 100, 120, something like that. He said, good God, how are you doing all this? I said, I got 35 guys working for me, you know, I mean, all these people, and, you know, So he completely flipped out. And he's an engineer, right? So he looks at me and goes, I don't have any idea what to tell you to do with this thing, son. This is completely out of my league. So I said, well, I know what to do with it. We're going to sell it. So you're going to sell the business? I said, well, yeah, I mean, it's better than throwing it away. So back then, it was right around the time that companies like Chemlon were first getting started. You know, they were present, you know, but they were still growing. And there were two of them, Lawn King and Chemlon, I think is what they were, in nearby town. So Saturday I said, you know, take me over. I want to present this business to these guys and see what I can get for it. So first guy offered me $187,000. You know, he looked through the contracts and he was pretty blown away too. Of course, to understand for him, he's going to spray pesticides. He's got millions and millions of dollars worth of business in that book, right?
Right.
And so I go out to the car and I say, he offered me $187,000. Of course, my dad completely flipped out at that idea. It's like, I don't know, at the time he was probably making 40. I don't know, right? I mean, it was a pretty long time ago.
Right.
And, so he said, oh, that's amazing. You know, let's go home. I said, no, let's go down to the next guy. So we got it up to just a little under 200 and sold it to that guy. And, you know, that's the story. But the reason it's a significant story and the reason I think it's worth sharing is that it was the understanding that the value of the business was in those contracts. It wasn't the lawnmowers, it wasn't the quality of the service, it wasn't the price, it wasn't the product, it wasn't it wasn't any of that. Those were assets and they were important attributes of the business, true enough. You have to have revenue, you have to have profit, so on, right? But the thing that made it valuable to the buyer was the fact that we had annualized contracts and they could take those contracts over and begin servicing those contracts. So they had an immediate cash flow engine that then they could upsell dramatically into their regular business, right? And so that's a lesson I took with me the rest of my career, is understanding, well, you need to know what drives the value of your business. If you don't know what's creating value, you don't know what to invest in. You don't know how to grow it, right? And yes, revenue and earnings, profit and margin, those are important factors, don't get me wrong, but they're generally not the thing that really creates value. I think I just told you the story about Zappos and how it became worth $1 billion because of its culture, you know, not because of its products and not because of its customers and so on and so forth, right? So, you know, when we work with businesses now, that's what we're focused on, is helping business owners understand, you know, what's driving the value of your business, right? Because whether you're ready to sell now or not, you want to be investing in the things that grow value, right? So, you know, I like to say to business owners, look, I don't really care whether you're ready to sell now or not. Yes, I am in the M&A business and we'll love to sell your business when it's ready to be sold. But if you're not ready to sell it, by all means, don't.
Right.
But just realize there will be an exit. I mean, whether you sell it or you keel over dead at your desk.
Right. Right.
And you want this business to be worth all it can be worth. And the way you do that is you have to understand what creates value in your business, right? It's typically not the things people think it is.
And what are some of the common things that people actually think it is?
Well, they generally think it's money, right? They market share, revenue, profit, that kind of thing. And as I said, those things are important factors. But, you know, more commonly, there are brand considerations, there are competitive considerations, there's client considerations, you know, so you could have a situation, and typically you do have a situation where if you're trying to sell your business, there are people out there that want to buy it for, let's say, your customer base. And let's say they're willing to pay, what they're willing to pay is directly related to the change in value owning you will have on their business. So if they have a $10 million business and owning you would make it a $15 million business, you're worth $5 million to them.
Right.
And that's what they'll pay. They're not going to pay 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Right? And if the reason they're paying that is to get your customers, what they're saying is, I have product, I want more market. I'm going to buy a market, right? Because I'm going to buy a captive audience of customers. I'm going to sell my stuff to them, right? Now, the other side of the equation, there might be another company wants to buy you that's interested in buying you for your intellectual property or your brand or some other reason, something not related to your customers.
Yeah.
And maybe they're going to pay, you know, $3 million, right? Because to them, you're worth even more, right? So if you knew those two facts, that these guys will pay 8 times earnings and these guys will pay 12 times earnings, right? And I gave you $100,000, what would I want you to invest it in?
Right.
The things that are going to generate 12 times returns.
Yeah.
I don't want you going after the 8 times returns, right? And so now as a business owner, you have a new framework to say, well, the thing to invest in this illustration I'm giving you, is intellectual property, product, and brand. Customers are great to have, and we'll keep generating those. But the thing that's driving the value of my business are those things, right? In that illustration. It's not always those things, clearly.
Right. Well, and I think what I'm hearing too is, understanding the landscape and the industry and the space that you're playing in. Like you said, it could mean one for one industry and one completely different for the other, therefore dictating different terms, different value for different clients.
It's
and
totally case by case.
Right.
There's some rules of thumb, but they're not very broad.
Right. So when you you had this aha at a very young age as a business owner, being that you were in the trenches, not only with your sleeves rolled up working in it, you were working on scaling a business, and you realized quickly that contracts, a database, clients, recurring revenue was extremely important to other potential exit strategy players in your business as you move forward. So now I want to fast forward a little bit. You got into the tech space.
Yep.
And as you kind of matured, got out of high school, went into college, what led you into this space, and how did you really start seeing some major momentum? Because based on your resume, I mean, you've built 6 successful tech companies, exited at over a combined $120+ million in value.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen on accident. So we got to unpack that a little bit before you just skim right over that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it was a great experience, no doubt, and it did lead to where I am today. I mean, I'm like everybody else. I continued to sort of flog through different ideas in college, and one of the fun stories is I picked up the beer distributorship for all the fraternities at my campus. So I became the most popular guy on campus. And I sold trucks beer by the truckload. I didn't sell it by cases, right? So you wanted my beer, you had to buy a truckload of beer with the taps on the side. You've seen those things, right?
Yeah.
So we had some pretty good parties, and that
might be a whole nother story, a whole nother podcast, right?
Deal. I don't know if that qualifies as a business, but it made me right. Then I quit school early, which a lot of entrepreneurs do. It just wasn't really. I didn't see it taking me anywhere I needed to go. I started a cabinet company, did really well, building custom cabinets for law firms and sort of high-end clientele. That morphed into a construction company. And I applied the same kind of principle there as I started looking for, what's the unique value that we're going to invest in to grow this business and make it more valuable than the next one, so someone will come buy it. And, we had a lot of process and procedures and documentation and things like that made it interesting to a large construction company who eventually bought it. Then I'd always wanted to get involved in technology. I mean, I've grown up, my dad is in the space program. I'm watching what at that time was the cutting edge of technology.
Wow.
The Valley was just beginning to boost, and they had these things called microprocessors that were going to be in everything. And I sort of thought, well, looks like that would be a pretty good place to be. So I went out to the Bay Area, got involved in a little startup out there, and really enjoyed the startup thing, just sort of the whole culture and the environment of it, that, people sleeping under their desks and whatnot. I mean, I thought it was great.
Yeah. And
had some success with that business, learned, sort of cut my teeth in sales and marketing, and just learned all the different aspects of the business. And in the meantime, got connected with some very influential venture capitalists there. And based on sort of the success I was having in various operational roles in the companies that I was working for, they eventually called me and said, hey, we've got this portfolio company. We've got 100 million in it, let's say. And the CEO can't communicate a vision for exit. Now, you understand that investors invest with a time horizon, not investing forever, right? They're not giving you the money. Right? they want to invest and they're expecting a return. And there's usually a time horizon on that return. And frequently it's 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, finding extremely patient money is not always the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do there, right? So, I mean, they're expecting the B in about 6 months. Right?
Yep.
Anyway, so back in that time, it took a couple of years to build a product, and it took a couple of years to prove it. It took, so the time horizon for innovation was very slow. But what we learned was that you could use that time to understand what's driving the real value of the business. And I applied that same principle 6 times, as you pointed out, and all 6 times it worked extremely well. Every one of those companies sold for north of 100 million and made a lot of money and made my investors a lot of money. And, some of those companies have grown now to employ thousands and thousands of people all over the world. So it's,
wow.
It's one of those experiences where you see something, it's like, hey, one of my companies built that.
Yeah.
So it's fun. And then I retired pretty young. I'd made a lot of money and had a good name.
When did you retire? What age?
Well, the first time I was in my 30s, and that didn't last very long.
I love when entrepreneurs say, when you ask them when they retired, and they say, well, the first time, because usually there's multiple times, right?
There is, right. But, I was getting older and, so I had a couple of kids, raised 2 amazing daughters that, was a great experience for my life. And then got bored after that and wanted to do something. And I thought, well, I really liked doing what I was doing. The thing I didn't really like about it was the VC overhang. At the end of the day, they did, in fact, control a lot of your life.
Right. So it still felt like a job, even though you were in.
Yeah, from time to time it felt like that, or sometimes more like prison.
Yeah. Depends who was backing you guys at that time, huh?
Who it was, right? And what your circumstances were, right? So,
right.
And but it was good. I learned an awful lot, as you can imagine. And then I decided back in 2010 to sort of hang out the Zero Limits Ventures shingle and sort of do the same kind of thing, but do it without the VC overhang. So we help business owners figure out what's driving the value of their business. How do they line up their investments of operating capital, whatever, to maximize the value of the business, so that when that eventual exit occurs, the business is worth as much as it can possibly be worth.
That's amazing, and that's quite the journey. I want to kind of back up a little bit because I know we have a lot of people that are in the startup space. We have a lot of people that are self-employed, which essentially is a startup, right? You're wearing multiple caps.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I got to work on marketing today. I got to work on sales tomorrow. I got to do it all in the same day, admin, accounting, all of that, right? So talk to me about some of the things that were challenges for you guys early on in your startup kind of season that were somewhat, they were challenges, but at the end of the day, there was the beauty in it. And it positioned you to kind of have some breakthroughs. And how'd you guys get through those?
You mean with Zero Limits or any of them?
Just any of them. I mean, any learning lessons.
Well, so it's not rocket science, but it's also something that appears to get lost.
Yeah.
In a lot of people's thinking. And I can see why. I mean, building a business, running a business is complicated. I mean, there's a lot easier ways to make money than building a business, right? So you don't become an entrepreneur for the money. You become an entrepreneur because you want the entrepreneur's life.
Right. The freedom, the lifestyle.
Right. Might include a lot of money. It doesn't have to.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you highlighted that though, because I think obviously when you lead with the intention of making money, that's not the best domino to start with.
No, it definitely is not the one to start with. So there's a lot of other motivations there. And so the learning that you do, and I think that probably if there's a tip there, there's, you have to, the way I describe it is you have to put on your learning cap every day. Know that you're going to learn something today. Might be painful, might not be. Might be just insightful, might be fun, right? But you want to be open to the learning and learn.
Yep.
So for instance, one of the common problems that exists, particularly in the Bay Area, at that time anyway, it's probably just as prevalent now. I'm just not out there, so I can't tell you. But back then, the biggest problem that people had was investors were investing in companies that were building products looking for a problem. So, they present these products to you. We can do this and we can do that, and it can do this, and it can tie your shoes, and it can wash your car, and it could, and then the question I always asked was, okay, that's really great. Does anybody care?
Right.
I mean, does anybody want to do any of those things?
They were talking features versus actually solutions to a problem.
Right. So I made a pretty good living just getting companies that had built solutions looking for a problem to get focused on a problem. Right. So, and people asked me how I did it. It was so simple. I called up the customer. I said, hey, what problems are we solving? Right. I'd sit up there and roll up our sleeves.
Yeah.
We'd come up with a problem needs to be solved. I'd go back to the engineers and say, can we take what we've built and solve that problem with it? They'd say, yeah. I'd say, okay, go do that.
Right.
And pretty soon we had a product we could sell. Right. So it's really that little bit, that little tiny connector that says, look, you got to be doing what people want. Right. And so, I think Warren Buffett said it easiest. If you want to build a business, you start like coming up with a product idea. You ask somebody who would buy the product, would they buy it? And what would they pay for it?
Right.
And if it's enough, then you go back and build it and you put it in front of those people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not more complicated.
So many people put in all this time, energy, money, sweat equity into creating something before actually testing the marketplace and pulling the marketplace. If this is something that is enough of a pain point for them to actually know if it's going to sell and or it's worth it. Right.
Well, we talk about the successes, and I have to admit, though, that I've had my share of miserable failures.
Those are the ones I always love to dive into most, and obviously provide the most insights.
Where at the end of the day, I'd go to my my customary monthly board meeting with the investors, and there's this one company. I'll spare you the name. That wouldn't be nice. But my first report was, this is not looking good, right? I don't really have a lot to report other than we're having a really hard time coming up with a product anybody wants. So once I got out of that board meeting and got on to the next one, the next meeting was, I really think we're not going to have anything here. We might want to look at, some alternatives. Let's, run an asset report and see, what could we get?
Yeah.
So I was ready to bail on this thing pretty quick, but they were not. So month after month after month, I'd go in. It finally got to be every month I'd go in and say, same report as last month, shut it down. There's nothing here. Nobody wants anything we've got. Nobody wants our products. Nobody even wants our employees. Nobody wants anything we've got.
Mm-hmm.
This just needs to be killed. Okay. Right? But I learned an important lesson in that experience. One of the investors pulled me aside and explained to me why, under no circumstances, were they going to shut down the company, no matter how much money it lost. Now, this is illogical, right?
Right.
Well, here's the deal. Remember that in the institutional money world, it's not their money. They have to raise that money, and they have to present in their accountability how the investments they've made are doing in order to get more money. And if they have a whole bunch of investments that they've shut down and bailed out on, nobody gets their money back on those deals.
Right.
So the money source looks at that and says, well, you've had way too many companies just crash and burn. No, we're not going to put our money in your portfolio. You're going to waste it.
The river dries up.
Right. So they'd rather keep them alive, struggling, than kill them. So, important lesson.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're out there looking for investor money, you have to understand the motivation of the investor. What is he really trying to accomplish? So you want to understand his portfolio. You want to understand his investment strategy. You want to understand his, expected rates of return, right? Because that's what's going to drive the decision he makes about funding your business.
Right. And the quality of those questions really will determine the types of answers you get, which can give you the ability to forecast and perform in a way that either gets you in alignment with them and or gives you kind of the clear writing on the wall that this may not be the person you want to be in business with too, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And look, don't go to an investor just for money. They got to bring more to the table than that. They got to bring you a network. They got to bring you potential clients. They got to bring you potential partners. They got to bring you something more than money.
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of money. There's money all over the place. Okay? You want to get the right money at the right time with the right terms.
I always say price, terms, and timing have to make sense for both sides in order for it to be that win-win. And I know you guys, in the M&A business, or for those that aren't familiar with that acronym, mergers and acquisitions, you guys are very, very particular and dialed in with what those are in order to make sure that you're fitting the right people into the right spaces and getting those individuals in business together, right?
Yeah, we have to. There's another really interesting dimension, and I want to be sensitive to the time here, and I don't want to get us on a rabbit trail, but you just mentioned something that's important. One of the critical elements that exists in business today that did not exist when I was starting was the social motivation behind business. The millennials want to do business with companies that are doing something.
Yeah.
Contributing in some significant way.
That social entrepreneurial characteristic.
Right. It's critical.
Yeah.
And what I want people to understand is, look, I'm going to be old and gone by the time those people hit the peak of their financial capacity. But I came up with the boomers, right? And I built a lot of successful companies just getting in front of what the boomers were buying.
Right.
They want Mustangs, build Mustangs. Right, I learned that from Iacocca. And then when they get older and have kids, they want minivans. Build minivans.
Yeah.
Right, it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
But so the millennials are broadcasting loud and clear. You want my business? You have to be an evolved enterprise. Right, you have to be doing something consciously in the world. You have to be contributing to something significant to making this world a better place. Right? Whether it's green or whether it's spirituality or whatever it is, right?
Yep. Yeah, right.
Everybody's got their own thing. But that gets ignored. And here's the interesting fact. Goldman Sachs did a study on this. It's written up in a book called, what the heck's the name of that book? Firms of Endearment. Tremendous book, by the way. And the study indicates that companies who invest in consciousness or conscious capitalism, evolved enterprises, grow in value. So critical thing from my perspective, right? Grow in value thousands of times faster than companies that don't. So if you don't have a mission, you need to start thinking about how do we push a mission into our business. Now, if you have businesses like Tom's Shoes that were built on the mission.
Right. You buy one, we donate one.
The mission was first, the shoes came next.
Right.
But it's very difficult for a company like Nike to retrofit, a conscious element or an evolved enterprise, right? Now they're doing other things. Don't get me wrong, Nike's a great company. But, but if you're in that place where you're either just starting or you've been running for a while, it's never too late to pull back and say, okay, what's important to me? I mean, outside of the fact that I'm making money and doing my own thing and building a legacy and all those motivations for being an entrepreneur, what's underneath all of that is a deep-seated commitment to something, some purposeful commitment, the reason you're here on the planet, right? And what I want people to hear is that if you'll tap into that, all the rest of this stuff gets really simple. Because if you get focused on, where the things are really mattering, then, the millennials will buy because you're doing the right thing. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you do have to provide value in your products. You have to do good business. I mean, all that's true. That's the pond you're in.
Right.
Right. But it often gets left off with this discussion, particularly in M&A.
Yeah.
Everyone else I know in this business is very transaction oriented. Here's the company. Here's what it's worth. Sell the company. Right. We don't look at it that way at all. We look at here's the company. What could it be worth? Oh, wow. If we invest here and there, we make it worth 3 times as much. And then these people will buy it and carry it on to a massive success. Right.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you guys are so, in tune with that, being that I am a millennial and, conscious capitalism and social entrepreneurism is something that I incorporate into my business. And it's something that I think the millennials and the future really, buying power is really aligned with. It's interesting that, I've talked to some people they're talking, what are we talking about? Revenue, earnings, right? All of that stuff that you talked about, and there's no conversation around that. And, I've heard people like Peter Diamandis and, Elon Musk and some of these other individuals that say if the big corporations and companies don't get on board with this, they will go extinct.
They will, no doubt about it. Happens every day. And you know what? There's some of these I'm the pallbearer for.
You're the bearer of bad news, huh?
Some of those companies, I have the pleasure of trying to get rid of them on the way to the grave, right?
Yeah.
It's hard,
right?
Because you're absolutely right. And let's just face it, the millennials outnumber the boomers dramatically. So
they are now the biggest
through the 60s and 70s and 80s, and basically every evidence of prosperity that you and I can point to today was sourced by the boomers, right?
Right.
That's just a mathematical fact.
Right.
And that's going to be dwarfed by the buying power and the buying propensity of the millennials.
Yeah.
Because they not only have more and there's more of them, they can buy a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, like you said, statistical facts. The landscape is different. It's changed, right? And so I love the fact that you're talking about getting in front of that, forecasting to get in front of that, incorporating that into your business or your mission or, your personal brand, your life, whatever it may be, aligning something like that into your life and your overall wealth equation is a big piece of it. So as we wrap up, because I want to be mindful of your time as well, I got a few questions that are left though. You talked about building and being a part of multiple businesses. I got a lot of entrepreneurial clients and, millennials that are at stages where, yes, it's important to try different things and understand, where your passions and your mission ultimately lie and where you want to end up. But there's also people that are, mistaking movement for achievement and spreading themselves extremely thin across many different things. What are your thoughts on doing multiple things, multiple businesses at the same time, and your recommendation for either alleviating that problem or eliminating it altogether?
Well, you're probably not going to like it. My recommendation is it's a bad idea. Right? I get the energy. And if you look at the people who are running multiple businesses simultaneously, they didn't build them simultaneously. They built one, it's working. Then they built another one, it's working. Now they get two working. That's different than trying to build two at once.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where I think people get into trouble, is they get a little bit too far out in front of themselves. And when I say working, I have a rule of thumb that I give all my startup clients is that, look, I don't care how much money you make in your first 6 months. You need 2 years to know that this business is going to continue to produce. 2 years of consistent, productive growth. And then, and only then, is this business ready, right?
That's a great rule of thumb.
Sounds like a strange thing, but it's been evidenced in my life by every imaginable kind of business. I don't care if it was construction or technology or communications. What I've observed is that in every single case, even network marketing, even a network marketing business takes a minimum of 2 years to actually get off the ground.
I love that. So you need 2 years of runway in order to really have the data set that you're talking about that will give you the ability to build infrastructure in a sustainable business model that you can scale, systematize, and then move on. Pushing 2 wheelbarrows up a hill can be quite challenging.
You can't do it. You just can't do it.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. You can't do it. Right. So, and you can try, but you'll end up with 2 not so good businesses at best. Right.
Yeah.
So if you think of it that way, if it's 2 years each, I can have 3 in 6 years. Well, that's pretty doggone good.
Right. Yeah, I think you've heard the quote many times, we underestimate what we can accomplish in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, right? So don't necessarily be short-sighted, look long-term, think long-term, or, I call it, us millennials, we have a microwave mindset in a lot of things versus maybe having the crock pot mentality of really letting things marinate and work together.
Well, it's interesting because there's a counterforce that sort of goes with this rule of thumb. Because if you look from the standpoint of acquisition, we're understand that when I say acquisition, what I'm really talking about is understanding what drives value, right? So we use an acquisition event as the anchor point to say, what drives value in your business is what people will pay for. So the only way that I can know what drives the value in your business is to find out who would buy it and why.
Right.
And then that's going to tell me what's valuable about your business.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the work that we do. But that notwithstanding, the thing to understand about that is we do all the math, we do all the analysis of all the most successful ones. What you find out is the ideal time for the founder to exit the company. It doesn't mean he doesn't own it. It means he exits the company to get the greatest rate of return is between 22 and 36 months.
Wow.
Right? If you go beyond that, you got work to do, you're in. If you go before that, it's probably not big.
Premature.
Now, there's outliers, of course. This
Sure.
is a norm curve, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But the point is that, well, okay, if that's true and it takes 2 years to build a business, those two things seem to be in conflict, right?
Right.
But they're not. Because what I recommend, if someone came to me today right now and said, hey, I'm starting a new business, what's the first thing I should do? My response would be plan your exit strategy. Because that's going to tell you where to invest your money, right? So describe the business and then look for people who would buy the business, find out what they'd pay for it and why, right? What would matter to them, customers, product, and intellectual property, whatever the case might be, and invest there. And then put yourself on a personal trajectory to get out of the business before 3 years.
That's great.
Right? Now you can sell the business and still keep a significant share of that business.
Right.
It's not like it doesn't go away when you sell it. Okay. So, right. So imagine being, 30 years old, having built 4 businesses or 6 businesses, and you own 25% of each of them.
Not too shabby, my man.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. Okay, so I want to wrap up on a few questions in regards to lifestyle and just wealth. On the Millionaire Mindcast, we talk about taking wealth far beyond just dollars, right?
Yeah.
And, you could be very financially wealthy, but you could be absolutely bankrupt in your health and your relationships and, giving back.
Guilty.
I think we all have, right? I think you have to kind of go through those failures or rock bottoms or, just surround yourself with other people that give you that enlightenment. And I know you have a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom gained through that. So what does wealth mean to you? I'm curious on your definition.
No, that's a great question. And it is something that everybody should really clearly define for themselves. And at the same time, really focus some energy on disempowering the self-limiting beliefs that are accompanied with those thoughts. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody says, well, wealth to me is $1 million in the bank. There's a little voice in the back of your head that says, you'll never have $1 million in the bank. And unfortunately, it's the voice in the back of your head that wins.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to quiet that voice in order to get the million. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, it's really about being able to make the contributions that I want to make to the world. I mean, you and I mentioned earlier before this call that we're both involved in the Pachamama Alliance. I'm very passionate about that enterprise, as well as some others, but that one's sort of taken the lead for me. And I've had the Amazon experience, so that was a big deal to me. And, I'd wanted to go there since I was, 5 years old or something, right? So
Magical.
Just hooked me, right?
It was magical.
And it's one of those things. It's a driving element of why I do everything I do. And it's, it takes we talk about tithing in various religions and so forth. It takes the lead part of my capital investments. And that's really the truth. Right. So I'm living into that truth instead of sort of doing a fake it till you make it kind of deal. Right.
Yeah.
So I think really being in touch with that and investing heavily in personal growth, personal development, really whatever your spiritual connection is. I don't care if it's metaphysical or religious. It doesn't make any difference to me. But you need to have a connection with something bigger. Because look, there's something bigger going on here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you think you got it figured out, man.
If you haven't noticed, you better pay attention. Right. It's not about us. Okay?
Yeah.
And so I think those are the things. I don't know if that's really answering your question, but to me, wealth is really being in that position where, it's not like financial independence financial independence serves it,
Right.
which is why I think that's why you end up with it. Because if you're really focused on delivering to the world that way, then the universe is going to respond, and you'll have what you need to do that. Right?
Yeah.
And those times when you're in scarcity, you need to look at that.
Yeah.
So what's it telling me here that I'm not pushing it out?
Right. Yeah. I had a conversation with one of my friends and mentors a while back, and we were talking about, so many people are like, how can I become a millionaire? Right. And I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. And he goes, well, what if they just started asking the question, instead of how do I become a millionaire or make $1 million? What if you started asking yourself the question on a daily basis of how do I give out $1 million worth of value?
Right.
And how do I contribute that? And what kind of opportunities and experiences and relationships will result as, a byproduct of that? So I just thought that was a really cool question. It left me thinking of, when I was younger, very money driven. And mind you, if I'm going to be completely honest, I still am. But instead of money being a significance thing for me, it's now more of a service thing for me. Is the more I make, the more I can serve, the more I can reach others, the more I can impact and empower others. It's a metric.
Another metric. It's exactly
Absolutely.
I agree with you 100%. And here's a slight twist on your saying there. Like, what if it wasn't about getting $1 million? What if it was about giving $1 million?
Yep.
Like, how much money would I have to have in order to give $1 million a year?
Yes.
Right. So if I don't focus on what I have to have, I just focus on giving the $1 million a year, there's a high probability that I'm going to have whatever I need to give the $1 million.
Yep.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, it has been an absolute pleasure spending some time with you, brother. Looking forward to staying connected and supporting more of what you're up to for, our listeners, our Millionaire Mindcast family. We have a lot of people that are building businesses that may need one, to merge and or be acquired. They may need capital raises. They may need, zero limit ventures, consulting advice and tapping into your brain a little bit more. So if they want to reach out to you and or find you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah. So I've got a website, zerolimitsventures.com, but on that site, there's a special page reserved for your audience that offers a video that explains a lot of these principles in more detail. It's about less than an hour, but there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a white paper that is called the Valuation Playbook. It tells you all about how to boost valuation in your business and identify some of those key value drivers. And there's a way to just schedule a 1-hour consultation with me by phone. And that's what I'm about, just helping people get what they want.
Right on, Steve.
That page is zerolimitsventures.com/access.
Beautiful. We'll be sure to get all of that linked up in the show notes on the website. So for any references on books or resources, Steve's website, be sure to check that out in the show notes. Awesome. Steve, always a pleasure, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Guy. Appreciate
Cheers.
it. Bye-bye.
Well, that sums up today's interview with Mr. Steve Little, the man. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. Steve really brought some interesting insights to the table, and I like how he made them all applicable to entrepreneurs and businesses really of any size. He's been a part of some massive exits. He's also been on the very bottom as well. So it was cool hearing how he kind of positioned a lot of those insights and strategies to anybody. And obviously his story is pretty inspiring, but I loved how humble he was as he shared it. And you actually may not know this about Steve, but if you're watching this video, you might be able to tell he was a competitive bodybuilder, and the dude's in his 60s and he's still doing it. So just another cool insight on him and just how much of a badass he is. But I think my number one takeaway from today's show was around the whole idea of conscious capitalism and the importance of tying your business mission and making money around something that's going to positively impact the world, and how you can make money and have more of an impact. For example, my main business is real estate investing and education. So I just started a charity called Homes for Hope Foundation that will take some of the company proceeds from my education courses and mastermind groups and help families in need actually keep their homes and stay in their homes instead of having to sell them or losing them. And I just really love that, Steve highlighted this, as I'm a big believer in this as well. And it just reminded me that there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a lot of money as long as you use it for helping others and tying it into a mission and a purpose that's bigger than just you, bigger than just the profits that you're going to be making, so we can make the world a better place for everybody, right? And hopefully that inspires you to incorporate this strategy into your own wealth building or business model, because I really do feel like this is going to be a big part of our future, especially with millennials being so driven by purpose and passion. This is something that's going to attract those people into your company and or attract them to buying and being a customer of yours. So maybe consider adding this into your model. But there's nothing better than giving back and knowing that you've impacted someone or something in a positive way outside of just the fact of you want to bring revenue into your company. So overall, we got a lot of stuff covered in this episode. Please share it with someone that you think might get some insight from it. This is how we continue to grow. Or you can show your support by leaving a review in iTunes, which helps us reach more people with these awesome messages from our guests. And as a last reminder, my real estate investing course and mastermind is starting again on July 20th. So if you're interested in building wealth through real estate, pop on over to sixfigureflipper.com and go ahead and enter your email there for more info, or you can just text the number 6-figure flipper, all one word, to 44222, and it'll put you on the list there as well. As I'm sure you know, right, 9 out of 10 millionaires became that through real estate, and that's how I became a millionaire. And I want to empower other people, anybody really that wants to create wealth through real estate investing, with this mastermind course, with this education. So if that's something that interests you, be sure to check it out. And with that being said, that wraps up this Mindcast for the week. So until next time, keep investing in yourself and your wealth on your march to $1 million and beyond. Cheers, my friends.